And so it begins. The very first car in Special Projects pack number 4. For those of you who have used my Special Projects builds before, you know the drill. For those who are maybe new and this is the first one you're checking out, basically from today through Friday, I'll be releasing 2 of these every day until we reach all 10 vehicles that were in the teaser trailer yesterday. They'll be coming out at 6 PM and midnight every day UK time, which is roughly like midday and 6 PM US time. And first of all, we're kicking off with the car that I know many of you were excited for, a car which many of us would love to actually be in the game, the E30 DTM touring car. Now, this is a little bit of a mismatch, because obviously we've got the Conrad Timms livery. There are tons of different liveries to go for, so you don't necessarily have to go for this one. I just like this one, so I did. And I'm using what I could find as roughly like 1992 DTM specs, so about 340 horses, 940 kilos, at least from the 2.5 litre models like this one. Of course, we cannot get it down to 940 kilos, at least without winning an extra weight level. And of course, for most players, you won't be able to do that anyway. So, of course, I will have flashed up on screen the player who made the livery. So, look down in the description. You can click on that link and, of course, add it and show them some love from me. So, as far as the parts, I would recommend the Stage 1 weight, of course. We've got the high lift cams, the high compression pistons. I do have the power restrictor and the ballast, but you won't actually need them for this tune, so you don't technically need to buy them. Stage 2 weight, of course. We've got the racing crank, the computer, the fully customized diff. Stage 3 weight, of course. I have increased the rigidity as well on the body. As far as the racing stuff, we've got the balance tuning, the polish ports, racing filter, silencer, manifold, pads, and I've opted for the drilled discs. You could go for slotted, you could go for carbon ceramic, I'll leave it down to you. It doesn't make too much of a difference anyway. We've got the racing clutch and flywheel, of course, suspension, the fully customised gearbox, aka transmission, and I've gone for racing hard tyres, because of course it is a race car replica at the end of the day, and even then, the point level isn't too high. 635 is not bad at all for the vehicle, and as you can see, nothing fitted under the extreme section. The only difference that I've actually made compared to what the player did on the livery was, if I recall correctly, I changed it from the number plate that they were using to the more square one. So that's just a personal preference thing that I wanted to change. You don't necessarily have to do that. As far as the tuning though, of course you want your hard tyres fitted, or whatever tyres you go for. For the suspension, I've got the 110mm option on ride height for the front and the back, which is fairly low, but it's not going to bottom out. We've got anti-roll on 5, the compression on the dampers on 35 with 45 for the rebound. As far as the frequency, we've increased it up to 2.75 front and rear, 3 degrees of camber. As far as toe, we've towed out 0.15 on the front, toe in even, 0.20 on the rear. As far as the diff, I've opted for halfway on initial torque of 30, the acceleration right down on 5, braking all the way up to 60. That won't necessarily be to everyone's taste, but I would recommend, as always, give it a try. If you like it, go with it. If you don't, of course, make some changes. As far as the gearbox, I haven't done any individual gear tuning, because it's not entirely necessary for this one. Of course, we have the race transmission fitted, and I've opted for a 250 km/h auto setting, which is technically only like 155 miles an hour, but in reality, that's pretty much more than enough, at least for most technical circuits. As far as the ballast, the ECU, none of that is touched. Downforce I've got as high as possible, because of course it is always going to be more of a cornering build rather than a straight line build first and foremost. And as far as all of this stuff, of course you can see what we already talked through in terms of fitting. And as you can see at the bottom there should technically be a stage 4 and 5 weight reduction. But as most players probably won't have access to that, myself included, I don't like to include stuff like that in builds, because if you've got it, then absolutely use it, but if you don't, it's not really fair to use it in the video at least. So that's it for the build, of course. Now let's jump out to the Nürburgring to see what it can do in practice. Now, one of the things that I'll say for this first build, I'll probably mention it again in a couple of the other ones, is I don't build these cars to feel like an M3 touring car that's in the game that we've then tuned. I wanted this car to feel like what the M3 could feel like as soon as it's arrived in the game if you drive it quote-unquote stock. So the handling is, of course, much more poised, much sharper, super grippy with those tyres. The one thing I would recommend is be very cautious of curbs. This car really does not like curbs and rumble strips, so try to steer away from those because it can cause some snap oversteer. In general though, if you roll on the throttle nicely, use flowing motions rather than snappy stuff, the car is extremely responsive and, in my opinion, of course I'm biased, but in my opinion, pretty damn fun to use, especially for a car that doesn't really have all that much power by today's standards. 340 is like hot hatch territory nowadays, but with such low weight, such a huge amount of grip and decent downforce as well, I'm pretty proud of this tune and pretty happy with it as well. So of course, we'll have to wait and see if we ever get an actual DTM car of the M3 in the game, but for now we have this one. It would be nice to have a 190E from the Mercedes dealer as well at some point to have some real rivalry with this, the Sierra and the Mercedes. That would be pretty cool. But for now, that's it for the first build. Of course, stick around on the channel later today for the next one, and of course through the coming week for all the rest as well. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.